Hue growing webinar. It's just gone 6:30, so we are going to get underway. Just to set the tone and to acknowledge the Māori, the life force in the room tonight, as well as all the energies that have brought us here tonight and over the past few months. I'd just like to pass to Therese, who's going to say a few words to set the tone for the night. Kia ora, Therese.
Oh, kia ora ana, Candace, and kia ora ana tūro ora mai to everyone out there. Yes, so I am Therese, and it's nice to have landed amongst you all this evening to celebrate the kōrero of Hue and what brings us together and combines us. But I'm also cognizant of the journey of the Hue from our tupuna in Hawaii, and so I've selected a karakia this evening in thought of all our relations up there in Maui. So bear with me. E ihu ana o luna, e pi'i ana o lalo, e hui nā moku, e ku ana ka paia. E ihu ana o luna, e pi'i ana o lalo, e hui nā moku, e ku ana ka paia. E ihu ana o luna, e pi'i ana o lalo, e hui nā moku, e ku ana ka paia. What is above be lowered, what is below will rise. The islands will unite and we will stand and be strengthened. Kia kaha Māui. Back to you, Candace.
Good, Therese, that was really beautiful. Yeah, that took me back to when you presented at the Enviro School, Hue. It really grabbed my attention, your kōrero about the Hue. So, ngā mihi.
Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa ko Candace aho, no Tāmaki Makaurau, kei Tāmaki Makaurau aho, e noho ana, kei garden to table aho, e mahi ana, kei Tāmaki Makaurau aho, e mahi ana. So good evening, everyone. My name is Candace. I am a regional coordinator at Garden to Table. I support the East and South Auckland region. I was born and bred in Auckland. I whakapapa to Tonga, Niue, Fiji, and parts of Europe. I have 3 lovely girls. I'm a gardener, a keen gardener. I'm very much at the beginning stage of learning and growing Hue. So welcome to this webinar tonight. Ngā mihi for your time. Ngā mihi to those who have shared stories and photos and videos with me over the past months. Ngā mihi to all the Hue growers, and thank you for your interest and tautoko over this time. It's all brought us together here tonight. We acknowledge the atua hini pu te Hue, may your spirit and ahua be with us tonight, as well as with the plants that we will grow in the next season. So I'm one of your facilitators tonight, alongside Prashanti, who's also from Garden to Table, who you will hear from very shortly. And we're really excited to be collaborating with Therese from Pacific Vision Aotearoa. Through our partnership, we are delighted and excited to bring you some special guests tonight who are knowledge holders, passionate people, experts who will be helping us learn about Hue tonight. So I'll hand over to my fellow facilitator, Prashanti.
Kia ora, Candace. Tēnā koutou katoa, e mihi ana kia koutou. Ko Prashanti aho, he kai whakahaere aho, kei Garden to Table aho e mahi ana, e noho ana au ki whakatū. So I'm Prashanti and I work for the Garden to Table Trust in Nelson, Te Tau Ihu. And yeah, I'm a real avid gardener, have been growing Hue for a few years. But I'm really excited about the guest speakers that we have tonight. I guess my role is really to just help with the flow of the evening and let you all know some of the tikanga. It'd be really cool just to keep yourself on mute. And if you have anything to say, just pop it in the chat. We are going to take some questions after each of our 4 speakers, but feel free to just use the chat as a space to interact whenever something comes up for you. Yeah. The first thing to put in the chat is where you are in the country and what your role is in your school. So I'll pop a question in and you can get interacting. Got it, Candace.
Kia ora. So this is our lineup tonight. So we're going to get right into it. So our first speaker is Therese, who we've just heard from. Therese is a good friend of mine, one of my mentors, a fellow zero waster. Formerly, Therese Mangos is a Cook Islander born in Aotearoa. She's one of the founding directors of Pacific Vision Aotearoa. She is passionate about working within her community and across the Moana to build a sense of mana, tiaki, protection of our beautiful world. Therese is the co-author of Patterns of the Past, Tattoo Revival in the Cook Islands that has recently been reprinted. So hashtag get your copy now. So I'll hand over to you, Therese.
Oh, thank you for that lovely warm introduction, Candace. Yeah, I feel like a novice actually amongst all these experts. I'm very new to growing hue, as I've only actually had 3 seasons. So there's plenty of people on the call that are probably more expert than I am, but I just come with passion, I suppose, and that's kind of what's guided me here today, and through having good friendship with Candace as well. So as you can see in the photo there, 3 seasons ago, out of plants that I received from the Mangere Mountain Education Centre, I managed to grow 2 hue out of that. And they're these two big beauties, actually. So I actually live, and these were grown where I live. And I haven't even started with where I am from and where I live, which is out in West Auckland, Te Uru ki Tāmaki Herenga Waka. So our soils are clay, with not much on top, but I'm an avid composter. I know Prashanti from her previous role as a compost collective facilitator. And so we like to grow, nutrient-rich soil. That's been helping my hue journey. But I suppose just to give context to why I got involved is I've always been interested in growing my own connection. I was brought up on the North Shore of Auckland. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's kind of like the Whitelands of Auckland. So since coming over the bridge as a young person, I've been just really interested in growing all my connections and my roots, like I do with any plant, and seeking out nutrients. It's taken me on a journey of learning all about my tattooing roots back in the Cook Islands, producing a book, but also this leadership group that I was privileged to be part of in 2018, a Mana Moana, but a journey for a year with fellow Pacific people, all interested in the wealth of knowledge that's in the Moana. And, the hue is just one of those beautiful things. But what we created over our time of coming together in 2018, we created a ceremony called Kawo Aotearoa that's very unique to Aotearoa. It's only ever used on the whenua of Aotearoa because it centres tangata whenua, Māori, but also gives women very different roles, which you wouldn't normally see in a kava circle. So very unique. And when we started in 2018, we were using like glass jars to put the water into the kava bowl and ceramics, and I'm going, surely what's the more authentic way of doing this? And so after growing the first 2 hue, I knew what they were going to be used for. And this was a ceremony that we performed just last year at Ihumatao, which is around bringing people together, acknowledging Māori as tangata whenua, and sharing space. I'll flick to the next slide if you don't mind, Candace. But as Candace already introduced, I'm part of Pacific Vision Aotearoa, and we have a vision to care for creation. And how we do that is, figuring out how can we be good kaitiaki. So back in 2017, since 2017, I've been working alongside Polyfest. It's the biggest Polynesian dance festival in the world, and working towards a plastic-free Polyfest. So this is just one of the kind of interactions that we had on one year where we did this whole resource recovery kind of system, a bit like a container return system, where everybody brought back their plastic bottles or cans and we gave them money. Not like the 2 cents back in the old days. It was like 20 cents. 5 items, you got $1. But what part of that journey and why I'm sharing that with you is that my motivation was with the kids is like, so what's the OG water bottle? What did we use before plastic? So this created more interest across other schools, especially in South Auckland, of growing hue for that reason. So I have one from my second season of growing, which I've formed into a water vessel, but I haven't yet sealed it. But it's one of the things I'd love to see in the future. It's a bit of a weddle actually out to everyone. It's like, well, maybe every kid that's interested can grow their own water bottle. And then, you know, the appreciation that you get from having to grow it for a whole season, having to dry it for a whole season, and then, as we'll hear later from Numa, how to decorate it and make it yours is going to be so special. They're not going to be throwing that away straight away, are they? So that's a little bit about the journey. But the seed that I got, and we're going to hear about that next, was from the Mangere Mountain Education Centre, from one of the gardeners, Richard, and we're going to hear from Brendan from another gardener. And without that handing over of seed back in that day, this whole journey wouldn't have started. And then one of the things that I love to do is to share what we do, grow to share. So we're all growing, sharing knowledge, and that's what started the Facebook group whenever we did that over a year ago, and it's just been growing from there. So that's a little bit from me, just to kind of start us off, and I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat afterwards. Kia manuia.
Ngā mihi kia koe, Therese. Yeah, so inspiring. I want to grow my own drink bottle, definitely. Yeah. All right, so there's no direct questions that have come up yet, although people are with me on the growing the drink bottle thing, I know. So we're just asking in the chat if you've grown hue before or last season, and let us know what you think. Otherwise, I'll introduce our next speaker. Tēnā koe, Brendan. Brendan is an avid gardener with a special interest in plants and their uses that were brought to Aotearoa from Polynesia. Brendan has worked as an educator at Mangere Mountain Education Centre for many years, as well as a building tutor at Sir Edmund Hillary College and Manukau Institute of Technology. Kia ora, Brendan.
Kia ora koutou. Well, I'm already fascinated just listening to Therese. She raises heaps of cool things, and yeah, I'm going to be more determined to grow some bottles. But the Mangere Mountain Education Centre was really the central thing in my little journey, chasing these waka plants. But I'll tell you, the roots of it was years earlier in the 70s. I was working in Ponsonby and came across, we were working with some kids who were in a home run by Betty Walk. I don't know if any of you remember Betty Walk, but she was the most amazing social worker. And she set up her own hostels and was taking kids in off the street way back then in the early 70s, late 70s. But anyway, I went round to pick up some of the boys for work one day, and there was an old Māori kroa sitting outside, and I started talking to him, and he says, boy, he says, have you got a truck? And I said, yeah, I got a truck. And he says, you want to learn about kumara? I said, yeah. I just said, yeah, that's how I get through life. I just say yes to everything. So he says, right, he says, take me to Rewiti. So we, after we got the boys to work, we jumped in the truck. We went all the way up to Rewiti in Helensville. And that began a long relationship with this old fellow whose name was Martin Noda, and he's the Noda family now spread all through the Waikato. But he had married into the Ngāti Whātua o Kaipara, and Martin's now buried up at Rewiti Marae. But he just had all sorts of interesting things, observations, and then one of the funniest ones was as we're driving along this old truck, he says, Ben, he says, how can you tell if it's a Māori house? And I said, I don't know, mate. How do you tell if it's a Māori house? And he says, they always have taro growing under the water tank. and taro, yeah, that was pretty cool. I hadn't had much to do with taro. But anyway, we spent quite a few years with Martin getting onto the kumara thing. And then during that stage, the Mangere Mountain Education Centre had been set up at Mangere, where I live, and we've been here for 40 odd years now with my whānau. And my wife is Tongan, and our kids have managed to find themselves all sorts of people from all around the world to hook up with. So we've got Niue connections and Taranaki connections and Scottish connections. So yeah, we're that seed's been spread far and wide too. But at the education centre, there was an amazing woman who was the initial gardener, and she started the kaupapa of these waka plants, essentially trying to replicate what you could see up on the Maunga and the gardening practices that happened on Mangere and more generally in the Auckland volcanic area. It's sort of, there's techniques that are specific to gardening in volcanic areas. If you see on that first photo on the left, we've tried to replicate that. That's a tāpapa that we planted 10 years ago, and the kumara are still growing. They don't die off. It's just a little quirk of the retained heat of the stones and enough sunshine. So that's part gets year-round sun and year-round heat. And we've got tāpapa all over the area there in varying lengths and different kumara varieties all doing the same thing. So we take our cuttings off them in the spring and plant. Yeah, so Mani developed that, and she to start with, she had the kumara and taro and the hue. The hue that Mani planted was from Opanoni, and that's the hue that you're using, and it came from the Moana whānau who lived in around that area, and Mani lived on a community up in the Waipā Ranges, the Waimā Ranges, at a place called Waiota. And so when she shifted down to Mangere, she brought those seeds with her and have continued to grow and grow and grow and grow and spread. She was also responsible for doing an amazing mural on the wall that showed the gardening practices as they might have looked, with some garden areas, mara, all laid out with the different crops, people working. But the three that she had missing, she mentioned them in that big wall graphic, were the ti and the ote and the uwhi. So I thought, well, there's a go. I want to try and find those and grow them. So that center photo, the middle photo there, is some uwhi that we just harvested a couple of days ago. So just remember, this is the midwinter and it's been through all those storms, and the uwhi just sits happily in the ground amongst all of that. Some of those are 5 kilos or more. They're huge roots. It's an incredibly productive plant, and that's the variety that is recorded as growing here by from all the early contact botanists. It's Dioscora alata, and probably its downfall was the generosity of Captain Cook donating pigs, because he thought Māori needed pigs. But of course, having gardens without pigs was much easier than having gardens with pigs. So I'm looking into exactly why the uwhi declined so much, and it seems that it just took an enormous amount of effort to fence the pigs out of your uwhi patch. And the other crops are quicker, so you can put aside 3 months basically to look after your kumara, harvest it, store it, and away you go, do other things. But the uwhi is in the ground for 8 or 9 months. And the picture on the right is the tea. It's cordyline fruticosa. And this one is transported all around the Pacific on the waka as well, and it made its way down here. The same thing, it's really delicious. Once you've got browsing animals in, the tea is all over. They just munch it down to the ground. It's sweeter than a normal cabbage tree, but it is a cabbage tree family. You can sort of see it there. And that's 2 years from that picture there. We harvested the same thing last week. And those succulent white roots there that look like carrots are what you're after. And that's 2 years growth from a tiny cutting. So yeah, and the picture I can't show you is the hue. We usually build a big hue structure and grow them over sort of a tunnel type thing. But of course, in the middle of winter now, the hue is not growing. But so that's what's been occupying me. But I've since Therese got so excited or so keen on the hue thing. I'm going to put more effort into that as well, because I love them. I've got the house here decorated with hue that we've grown over the years as well. So thanks for that, Therese. You've redirected me a little bit. I want to get back into it in a big way. If the Aote is growing in that first picture, the Aote are the bushes on the left, and we've worked out a way to manage them to produce produce a lot of usable material for making the bark cloth, the beading the Aote into the fabric. You know, it's those of you connected to the art world, there's a huge resurgence amongst Māori artists in using that material for art. So we'll shortly have a little workshop on the site. Some people want to come in and look at how to manage a little plantation to get better quality bark to produce better quality fabric. So, but my motivation for that was to build a manu Aote, because everywhere you see people building manu Aotes, but they're not using Aote, they're more than likely using it should probably be called a manu tukutuku, which is a beautiful kite in itself. But I was obsessed about the manu Aote, and I thought, once I found the plants, then I grew it. And because of my Tongan connection with my wife and her whānau, we had some sessions and produced some nice Aote. So this year was the first year that I managed to build a manu Aote. So I haven't got a picture of it there, but next year it's going to be about 3 meter wingspan is the sort of scale that these things were built on. But yeah, that's me really. I'm descended from, I'm an Irish descent, and my family are potato growers and growers of all sorts. And I owe it to my old man. He hated grass, so we had eight of us in our family, so we had the whole place in vegetables. So I've got it in my bones, so just can't help it. But yeah, we're more than welcome to share any plant material if we've got enough available, if anyone's interested in any of those things. And you can join this fascinating journey, and it doesn't take much skill. They're so reliable, these plants. You just have to put them in the ground, basically, and with a minimum of tender care, keep your pigs away, and you're in business. Okay, that's me, but I'm welcome for any questions or contact if you want to do that. Thanks.
Kia ora, Brendan. Yeah, so interesting, so much gold there, and I haven't looked at the chat, so Prashanti, if there's any questions in the chat, just free to let us know. But I have a question, just thinking about the waka plants, those 6 that you mentioned. Do you know of, or is there any relationship between them in terms of growing together? Do you what am I trying to say, symbiotic relationship? Could you plant hue next to a cabbage tree to grow up, or
yeah, I haven't really explored that, but I think the beauty of them is the continuity of food production. So the hue is the first one to grow in the spring, and so you've got the young fruit available for food if you require it. And then of those crops, then the kumara will come in next, depending on where you are. And then the uwhi will be ready right through. I've still got uwhi in the ground now, so and then the tea is more of a survival plant. It's still good food value, but it's resilient, so it can survive any catastrophe. You've still got something in the garden that you can get into while you re-establish the other crops. So that's the sort of angle I'm looking at. But I haven't seen anything on, or haven't even experimented with companion planting.
Interesting. And the seeds that we got, do you have any tips for storing them? So vaguely remember you mentioning some technique.
Yeah, we've had a lot of problem with seed that we've tried to store, because the education centre has been actively distributing them to people, to visitors, just exactly what happened with Therese. But Therese was lucky; she got a hue that hadn't been opened, so I think really the best, other people will talk about it, I think the best protection is to have the seeds in an unopened hue, and just crack it open, you know, about now with people getting ready for planting, just crack it open. And that should protect them from the weevils, which seems to be the worst post-harvest pest that we've noticed. I just opened up one today as well because I'm getting ready to plant the next lot, and there wasn't any sign of weevil. There was no damage to any of the seeds. But it's one other technique that one of the trustees at the education centre showed us was a technique to smoke the seeds if you harvest them from your hue, which is going to happen if you're going to use the hue for some purpose. You need to get the seeds out. So he smoked them in a manuka smokehouse, and it must have been for quite a wee while because the seeds had a darker brown colour to them when he gave them to us. But we were able to store them for quite a few months, and where other seeds that hadn't been protected did get weevil attacks, these ones seem to be much more resilient. So that'll be something worth trying if you have a need to, you know, store your seeds, waiting for the planting time.
Yeah. Prashanti, was there any questions in the chat?
Yeah. Thanks, Paula. She's saying that she's grown some organic taro in Samoa some years ago. Now she's asking, do you think plants you talked about tonight were grown by Māori more south in the Motu?
Yeah, the taro's been found right down the west coast, some fair way down, and it's lucky because the rats won't eat it, and if it's in a swampy area or sort of a little tucked away, it can survive quite nicely. If grazing animals probably won't eat it either because of the leaves being pretty much inedible raw, but they're beautiful cooked. But yeah, there's been taro found down the west coast, and there's ecosystems everywhere, where things will grow, you know, and so that's the art of the gardener, really. If that's your food supply and you want to eat it, then you got to take a bit of time to try and modify the area where you are, or or hunt out an area that has a sort of little microclimate that can produce them. But we just luckily had a little hui with the guy, Peter, what's his name? Peter, it'll do. He's just come back. He's just come back from Japan, where he's a researcher in taro, and Peter Matthews, and he's written probably the most authoritative book on taro, and he has followed the taro trail all around the world, basically, and has amazing insights into the types of varieties and the uses and the but probably too much to go into here. But if you come across, if you search out Peter Matthews, Dr. Peter Matthews, he's a brilliant, really approachable academic, and his stuff on taro is the best that you can get.
Oh, I wonder, why won't the rats eat the taro? Like, they eat everything else, don't they?
Yeah, but it's just the chemical in it, the oxalic acid that's in the raw taro, because you can't. It's an edible raw, which is an incredibly good feature. It's probably why it's spread all around the world. You know, it's a staple almost everywhere. And like Peter was saying, the origin of it is on the Bay of Bengal, and that confluence of all of those big river systems that come down through India and Pakistan. That's where it originated, and it's been spread from there. But yeah, what a cool thing, not being eaten by rats.
Yeah, totally. And so Richard is asking, what type of uwhi is it, and where can you get a cutting from, please and thank you.
Kia ora, Richard. Yeah, this uwhi is it's pretty much identical to the drawings, the photographs of uwhi that in the Auckland Museum, and it's the right variety. So it's a Dioscorea alata, which is a pretty common one, but it's otherwise known as the Pacific uwhi. Pacific yam. It was not developed as much, but it was found by a Tongan grower here in Mangere who shifted to New Zealand from Tonga and wanted desperately to grow uwhi. And he just tried growing any plant material that he could get through fruit shops. And he was lucky to strike this particular one, and it grew. Not all of them grow because they're mostly fumigated when they import them, so it's difficult to get viable plant material. But anyway, this one, after about 20 years, he developed this one, and just by chance at our local Mangere bike club, our cycle club, we had a little lunch together, and we were talking about gardening and stuff. And I've been scouring Tongan gardens for years trying to find them, but nobody had been growing them much. Anyway, but lucky at it, that day I came across a guy Sione, whose mate Ala, whose father Ala had some taro, had some uwhi left over, and he went and got me a box. So we started with about 20. So this is about 3 years ago. And I've just made it my mission to propagate those up. So if you want some planting material to answer that question, just get hold of me. I think there'll be an email somewhere, and I can send you some stuff. So far I've sent planting material, pura to Opanoni, to a friend, or to Mani, the lady from the education centre. I've sent some down to Gisborne, to Matahi Brightwell, who's a mate from Wakaama, and I've sent some up to Uwawa, further up the coast, because Uwawa was mentioned in the very first contact with Cook, and in the journals he saw big areas, acres and acres and acres of uwhi growing in Uwawa in that time back in the 1700s.
Wow. It's so cool that you're re-spreading it around and it's able to propagate itself, and yeah. How amazing.
Yeah, I'm just sort of learning. There's lots and lots of techniques, and we've stumbled across this little Tongan growers network, and because Tongan seems to be the ones that are in the Pacific are the strongest uwhi growers. And anyway, there's a huge amount of information that they're really happy to share, and so we're doing things together, and I'm learning as much as I can.
Cool. I imagine, like most root vegetables, they're fairly hardy. They can handle being snapped and divided off fairly easy, or are they sort of a sensitive thing to propagate?
It won't rot in the ground very easily. Any skin damage, sort of like anything, will introduce a rot into it. So when you're harvesting it, it's really, really critical to be super careful. And it takes some effort, because these things can be, like 400 mils deep, or 500 mils in the soil, millimeters. So it takes a good bit of effort. When I'm digging them, I always think of that story about those blackbirds that are trying to pull worms out of the ground, and they spend more energy pulling the worm out than they get from eating the thing once they've got it. So sometimes you got a really big uwhi, I'm thinking, man, I'm using a lot of energy to get this thing out. But yeah, you have to be super careful. And there's little techniques not to snap it. They're quite snappy, so you need to keep pulling it straight. If you just slightly lever it, it'll break off. And then you've got an issue with that exposed surface. It reduces the storage life pretty markedly, and it will rot within a week if you don't do anything. But if you're careful about cleaning up any wounds and dressing them with wood ash, is a good way to do it, but still they won't last as long as a nice undamaged one. But they once you've got them out of the ground, they just store really, really easily. You have to dry them in a windy place, and they just need air around them, really. I've just got mine sitting in a garage in a carport. The cold weather doesn't bother them, so they're amazing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's so cool seeing how the kumara grows year round as well. It makes such logical sense once you've explained it. Yeah, you've always got propagation material there and roots.
Yeah, it's the reason. Well, we did that technique because that's what you can see on the maunga. That's where the tour groups go up and they see these stone mounds higher up on Mangere, so they'll be above any frost level, and they're facing towards the west, which is a bit weird. But as it turned out, that seems to be the best way. We've replicated that at the education centre, and the best beds are the ones that are in shade pretty much till after midday when the sun's further around and they get the late sun. But yeah, it's great. It's like a food security thing. Everybody should try and do that. Like set aside a warm area and have your kumara set up a tapapa and try and keep the cold winds off it. That's a good thing. But it means that in the spring you've got, if everything else fails, if the rats get your kumara, you've still got cutting material. You've got the leaves, the stalks. You can just cut them and plant them, which is really the best way to do it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed taking my mind back to the waka people carrying the plants here to Aotearoa, and as kairaranga, I can't not mention the harakiki in that picture as well, that when these first visitors came to Aotearoa, how finding the harakiki as a new plant and how to utilize that always kind of boggles my mind, because some of the techniques used for raranga are so complex, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, good on you. Yeah, no, keep that alive as well. It's difficult to find people in the city, you know, who've got time. It's like this sort of hectic lifestyle that everyone's in. But those those harakiki plants were donated. There's about 6 different varieties there that were donated by weavers from around the area, and quite a few years back now. So, but they're not being made use of enough. So, but you could be the one to bring that back.
Oh, we're all doing it together. That's what tonight's all about, to inspire others on the same journey. Yeah. Cool. And we have one final question from Lynn asking about the tea, asking if you eat it. I think you've briefly mentioned it, but maybe you want to answer Lynn's question as a final one.
Yeah, kia ora, Lynn. Kia ora, Lynn. Yes, you definitely eat it. You just break off those white shoots, those white roots, sorry, they look like carrots, about the size of carrots, and you can chuck them in a hangi. You can steam them, chuck a bit of salt and pepper on if you like. Okay, but they're quite edible, slightly bitter, but it's one of the waka plants that's been selected and selected for sweetness. So over the generations and generations of gardeners. So yeah, it's definitely produced as a food. It's grown as a food crop, but also the leaves are really useful. The tea pare, that's where that comes from, and the leaves are really strong. They can be processed for making really nice woven material. Yeah, but the roots, yeah, break those carrots off and get into them.
Well, ngā mihi, Brendan. Yeah, that was really interesting. I was really lucky to have do a uwhi harvest with Brendan, I think about a month ago now, and we actually just ate it for dinner the other night, and yeah, it was really nice. We had it with the coconut cream and onions, and yeah, really interesting and tasty texture. So yeah, thank you, Brendan, for that experience. So we're going to talk with Erin now. So Erin Kiremeta Kappa is a teacher at Kihikihi School and is a Garden to Table program champion there. She's a skilled gardener and has been growing hue for many years at Kihikihi School as well as at her home. Erin is an advocate and leader in the Māori language movement and Māori arts and crafts, and is an accomplished athlete in Māori fighting arts. So over to you, Erin.
Kia ora e teiwi. Tuatahi ka mihi kau kia koe Therese. Nau tēnei hui whakatuwhera mā ngā kupu tapu ki ngā atua. Mihi atu ana kia koe o tira, kia koutou ngā kaiwhakarite tēnā koutou. Thanks for karakia, Therese. Thank you for your words, and our aroha's definitely with Maui. And to our organisers here tonight, o tira kia koutou katoa. Gosh, what a privilege to be able to come on and speak alongside the people that I've been listening to avidly and taking notes about their kōrero. So thank you for arranging that, Candace. I'll start with the germination. We've got those photos there. As you can see, I'm a bit of a tutu. And so I had these seeds, these kākano, that I harvested from a couple of hue last year that I grew. We only grew 3 really successfully last year. Actually, 1 was successful, 2 rotted in the drying, but I salvaged some of the kākano. And so I've got salvaged kākano that I'm not sure is going to be really fertile. And I've got kākano from one hue that dried really well. So anyway, here I am having a tutu, and you can see, so I heard about the clipping of they call them the ears, the taringa of the hue seeds. And I thought, okay, so we're clipping the seed, clipping those ears so that the water, which we soak in the water, can better penetrate. And I realized then that, you know, like a pumpkin seed and a sunflower seed, that it's just the husk on the outside. So I thought, what happens if we remove the husk full stop? Will it speed up the germination? Will it, is it not going to be good enough? And then I'm having all these thoughts about, you know, like people, is it when we need to push through difficulties that we become stronger afterwards? Should I leave the kākano in the husk so that it has to push through it in its attempt to get, you know, to tamanutera, to the sun? Anyway, so you can see I have 3 kākano there. In the end, I only planted 2, and the other one I trimmed before soaking. So I soaked them just for about an hour, and then put them onto the paper towel, sprayed it with some water so it wasn't completely dry, folded it up nicely and popped it into a Ziploc bag, and then into the hot water cupboard. And as you can see, within 5 days, well, it was actually 2 days actually, the held kākano had already sprouted. And so there's, after 5 days, you know, it's quite a good amount of growth. And the unhulled one, which was clipped and soaked, has just started to pihi there, just started to come out of its shell. Yeah, so that was pretty exciting. Knowing that it's definitely faster. However, I'm aware that it may be, you know, the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day. And just because the kākano, you know, ka pihi, it sprouts, ka tupu, it grows, and they have grown into tiny little seedlings, the 3 of them. You know, I'm not going to be able to tell until we have the hue in our hands or not. So yeah, it's all an action, research in action there. We had a really successful year last year, and a really great harvest there. So these are photos from last year. We grew them at Kura, at Kihikihi School, and we purchased steel concrete reinforcement mesh, like, what's it called? Concrete reinforcement sheet, and lay it over between the edges of beds, we've got sleepers on the ground, the edges of our garden beds, and just tucked it in there and secured it with waratahs and what are they? Cable ties. And so all of this growth that you can see there came from just 4 plants. And we're just buzzing out over that. So in the Mara there, we had a really well, we're in the Waikato, so the soil is quite fertile. But we'd fed it up with lots of organic compost, for about 2 years before. And so nice, when the beds were created, my whanaunga did that, and she laid out, it's just compost all through the bottom, lots of mulch, lots of grass clippings, all the good stuff. And so we did dig in some chicken and sheep pellets a few months before and just let it, do its thing for a little while. And then when our tupu were big enough and it was warm enough, we planted just 4, and it just took off like we couldn't believe. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not sure I have any tips, except I have heard that a good seaweed fertilizer is really good for growing hue. Not too often, because otherwise you get lots of leaves and lots of kawe, I don't know what the vines. And you sort of want to limit that so that you can put the effort into the actual fruit. Once I had to train them up the vine, had to train them up the arch, the frame, because they were tending to head away on the ground. So that was easy enough to do, just wrap them around and away they went. And when I felt that I had enough, and once the hua started to set on the vine, I went around and removed the tips so that they'd stop growing. I didn't remove any of the kawe, the vines, although I'm going to look into that this season, just so that we can sort of maximize, maximize the growth of the vines that have, really, really well set fruit on them. We removed a whole lot of fruit, a whole lot of hue when they were quite young, because they were coming out quite soft, and you could see that they were beginning to rot. And so there were a lot of the fruit that hadn't set because of, I think they weren't fertilized, later on in the season, but later on. So we just go through and, pick them all off, and we just drop them on the ground amongst to become, ready for next season. As you can see, our kids, we used to come down and we go into the garden and we sing, usually songs encouraging them to pull the weeds and things like that. But we sing in Te Reo Māori, and we say our karakia before we go into our mara. We talk about ranginui and papa tuanuku and hene pute hue and rongo and haumie tike and all those things. We're arumaki reo. And the tamariki really took ownership, particularly of the hue. They're really excited once they started getting big. As you can see, they reach up, and we've got a video there, I think. Do you want to play that now, Therese? Sorry, Candace.
Taku pepe. Haere mai kia papa.
Nera.
Ai.
Haere mai kia papa.
Haere mai. Kia ora.
Kua tupu ni. Tino nui nai nei.
Sorry, te tai animal.
Yeah, so you can hear our matero there going, kei konei a papa, here's daddy, he says, you know, hara mai taku pepe, come here my baby, and reaching up and you know, kei te miri miri, giving a little, giving some love to the hue as they grow. And, you know, that is just, for me, that's it. If we can get our kids treating, you know, te tāau, our environment, that way, they have that love and that feel that relationship. You know, we know if this is my pepe, then I'm going to be looking after it. So, yeah, I love that video. Very proud of those kids. Yeah, so that's a little bit about that. Oh. With the seeds, this year I you know, done research like we all do and go nuts and try and find everything. So I've heard that with the kākano, when you select the kākano for replanting the following season, you know, pick the regular sized ones, regular as in their shape. Make sure they're not, you know, that they're nice and tidy and things like that. And I've lined some of my kākano up, and some are white and super soft. So I'm like, oh, well, I figured out that's not ready. Other ones have got mold on the husk, like one of the photos that we showed earlier. There's a little bit of mold on the husk. Now, despite that, the tupu has still grown. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll, you know, proof is in the pudding. We'll see how that goes later on in the year. I've got some that are crooked. So we'll have another go at that. I've got some that are quite flat and others that are quite thick. So yet they're all from the same hue. So we'll see how that pans out. I'll need to do some really good labeling of things and keeping track. So I made a few notes here. Oh, and I've also heard that when you soak your kākano, a way to tell whether it's a really good kākano is should it sink. Now, none of mine sunk, yet all except 2 sprouted and are growing. So, yeah, I'm going to disprove that theory. Should they produce as well as these ones did? Somebody loving hue. Now my husband, he's into hue as well. He was reading something on the Facebook, I think, about I think it was pumpkin growing. And I'm going to try this year with I'm going to grow some hue in the on the field at Kura. plenty room. Let's just grow a hue patch. And so once the hue is of a reasonable size, and then once it sends out its first kawe, the vine goes out, and then once the leaf sits there, and there's usually a you know, a tupu growing there for a flower, and then it carries on. So once you've got a few, I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove the I'm going to leave the leaf, just the leaf, and remove the other like kawe that want to come off. Remove those, and I will you put some what's it called? Some root growth serum underneath, and you bury the vine so that the second leaf at that space there so that that re-roots into the ground, and then you let it go again and do it again. So you have like a bit of a vine thing going. But you know, if you can imagine one plant with like 4 sets of roots in a line, and then once that's established and that vine is buried, and then let the kawe go and see what happens. Yeah, so I think, you know, more roots equals more nutrients from Papatūānuku. And I'll be really interested to see how that goes. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's probably me for now. I'm a little bit of a tutu, you know, I like to think I'm a bit like Maui there. And yeah, have a crack at it. Pai tu pai hinga, eh? You win some, you lose some.
Yeah. Oh, kia ora, Erin. I was just scribbling down lots of notes. Yeah, I picked up lots of tips from you. If there's no other questions, I would just flick a question at Erin. Just you mentioned with your clipping and soaking technique, did you do that last season, because you had such a amazing harvest last year? Did you do that method that time? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, Erin.
I just clipped the ears off last. Yeah, I didn't husk them, hull them.
Okay, yeah. And I just saw in the photo, I think it said Tangaroa. So did you plant by the moon last season, and are you going to do that this season as well?
Yeah, definitely. So these kakano, those ones in the photos, it was a Tangaroa moon when I soaked and germinated.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I soaked and germinated on a Tangaroa moon. I also got a bit of a karakia that I was going to share with you. So I've taken pieces from different karakia that I've done a bit of research with. And so it's quite a simple one. It might be really nice for the kids though, because it's quite repetitive. And you know, you could, well, you know, like I was saying, I'm a bit of a tutu. Could put like a, you know, the hand games, the old under the bambushes kind of thing, just to help them learn it potentially.
Yeah, would love to hear it.
Yeah, so I'm going to read it because I might get nervous and forget it. E rangi tupu tupu, e papa tupu tupu, pu te hue tupu tupu. Whānaua kia tini, whānaua kia mano, whānaua kia rea ngā hue, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna tīna, haumi e hui e tāiki e. Yeah, so that's it really. It's just a request or an acknowledgement of rangi and papa and hene pu te hue, and a request that whānaua kia tini whānau to bring forth, or to give birth, to bring forth. Kia tini, kia mano, kia rea. So we're asking for multitudes of hue. Koia.
Yeah. Oh, kia ora, Erin.
I could type those that.
Yes,
I could
please.
type that into the chat.
Yep. And we can definitely share it out post webinar as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something in that with the tamariki, you know, giving awhi and aroha to the hue. Obviously made a difference in your harvest, your recent harvest, and also what you said about, you know, fostering, you know, that love for Papatūānuku, you know, from a young age. So, you know, children, you know, can grow up and learn to, you know, love and respect Papatūānuku. So, kia ora, Erin. Prashanti, was there any other questions on the chat?
Nothing specific. Oh, look, Louise had her hand up, I think. Louise, would you like to ask a question?
Oh, I only if I've got time. Have I? Yep, a very quick one, Erin. Kia ora, Erin. That was really, really, really beautiful karakia. I also work at Garden to Table, so you know, kia ora for your fantastic work at Kihi School. Michael, I was just curious about the idea of planting in the field, and instead of over an arch, and that what would the hue then rot on the ground potentially, and do you have to go around lifting all the hue up in the field when they grow, or did I get that a bit wonky?
Yeah, no, that I think they just grow. Yeah, and they sit on the ground. There is some recommendations that you can put down, especially if it goes, you know, if there's been lots of rain over the summer or at the end of summer, you can raise it up from the ground, just put it on a little something, you know, a board or something, just to keep it out of sitting in the wet. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. No, they can absolutely just grow wherever.
Cool. Thank you. Kia ora.
Yeah, and I think, Louise, sometimes if they're on the ground or a hard surface, you can almost shape them to have a bit more of a flat bottom so that it can then sit on a table more easily. If it's hanging, you get this lovely rounded shape, but then it wants to fall over on a hard surface, perhaps. Yeah. Oh, ngā mihi, Erin. So awesome listening to you speak. I have a few questions. I guess the first one is, well, it's about planting other types of cucurbits like pumpkins and things. And yeah, tell me, would you put pumpkins in the same garden as hue?
Well, interesting enough. I had a couple of late tupu come up, and I took them out to the pā, to the marae, and planted four of them actually, 4 tupu out there, and I tried to make it in a nice sheltered place so it would stay warm, and it produced one. I've got one hue from it, but one night I was walking past and I noticed that of all these white flowers, there was one orange flower.
Ooh.
And I thought to myself, cross-pollination. So no, I'd keep them away from all of those. And last year, like for this season that we've harvested this year earlier on, I made sure that in our garden there were none of those cucurbits.
Kamo as well. No kamo.
Yeah. I've heard that you should put maybe a mile in between.
Oh, that's a long way.
That is a long way. And I'm wondering how far those little bugs can fly, but those night bugs, I'm sure they're quite versatile though. So no, I wouldn't do it. And just the fact that there was that one orange puti on the hue with amongst all the other white puti, it was like, oh yeah. So
Interesting.
It's a no from me.
Yeah, cool. And it's really cool listening to you talking about cutting off the laterals and making it. It sort of reminded me of what you might do with the tomato plant, that you can cut the laterals off, but then lay the stalk of the tomato down. You could do that as well, for the tomato would root into the ground. Similarly, probably more readily than a hue, I'm guessing. But a really, really interesting concept.
Yeah, laterals, that's the word. But those of you that have grown hue, you might have noticed that the ones that if they've got the kawe, the vines on the ground, they've got little whiskers coming out of them. So you can see that they want to. And maybe just with a little bit of that root growth serum, just give it an extra boost and a little bit of dirt over it, and away they'll go.
Yeah, cool. And did you ever work out, is it worth the seed struggling out of its husk, or should we help them?
Yeah, that was a tricky one. I noticed when I pulled the seed out.
I loved your analogy of childbirth, that our tamariki struggle out of our puku, and
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be pondering that for a few days, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll let you know. I'll make sure I know which spot that one gets planted in, and we'll see how the hue are.
Mm.
They might be soft.
Oh, well, all the best with your Hue journey. I hope this next season is as abundant as the last season was for you. And yeah, all the best with utilizing all your drink bottles you've just grown.
Yeah, we've got quite a few seeds coming everyone's way. Just let me know.
Oh, ngā mihi ki a koe.
Kia ora.
I think I'm talking now. Goodness. We're running out of time, I think, Candace, so I'm not going to say much, but I did ask everybody if they knew who the pollinator was, and there's a little picture of our pollinator here. It's a moth. I don't have its name. Sorry. Candace, do you know? Does anybody know who its name is? You're on mute, Candace. Yeah.
I think it's Hihue,
Hihue.
Hihue, I think.
Hihue. Yeah, so it comes out at night, and interestingly, the puti puti of the hue plant also comes out in the evening, or perhaps in the early morning, and that's when this moth is flying around. A quick little Google search actually said that bumblebees can also pollinate hue, which is quite interesting. So you've got male and female flowers on the same plant, but they look quite different to each other. And it's really easy to actually just pollinate by hand. Hue is probably the only plant I've pollinated by hand, and amazingly been successful. So this is a male flower, the picture here, and often when the hue plant starts growing, it'll grow a lot of male flowers first, and sometimes, well, I've heard, I'm not saying it's good or not, but you can try just getting rid of some of those male flowers to start with, and that might encourage the production of female flowers, but they often come after a bunch of male flowers bloom. And when you see a female flower, you'll just know she's ripe and like bursting out the top, and she's got this beautiful bulb underneath. And yeah, so I just sacrifice a male flower, pick it off, and I kind of peel the petals off actually. So all that pollen's kind of exposed, and then I just like donk it onto the female flower right where she needs it. And yeah, and wish her luck. Yeah. So I wish you all the best with your pollination, and yeah, see if it possible to do it by hand. Yeah. That's about me. Oh, yes. And if you're an Enviro School, Enviro Schools has done made a really cool resource about hue, Te Mātou a Maui Hue resource, it's called, and it was developed in the Havelock North with the kaiako from the Havelock North Central Kindergarten with Purupi Bletcher and Francis Blake, and it's a beautiful document with some karakia and the story of Hene Pute Hue, and just some inspiration about what you can do with it. Talks about the maramataka and yeah, preparing your mara and things like that. So it's a really good resource. It's about, I don't know, 8 pages long or something. So Enviro Schools has generously allowed Garden to Table to share this resource with our people who would like to see it, and so we can email that out to you as a PDF if you'd like. Yeah.
Kia ora, Rashanti. So I can introduce Numa.
Thanks, Candace. Yeah.
Yeah. So kia ora, Numa. Just an introduction for Numa. He is an interdisciplinary artist who works in graf, tatau, and mixed media installation. His practice centres on the exploration of urban space and the processes of building connections to his Pacific heritage and people. So kia ora, Numa.
Kia ora. What a pleasure to be here tonight with everybody. I'm here to talk about its use as a decoration. I'm of Cook Island descent, but I was born in Canada, hence the accent. And I'm lucky enough to live here in Aotearoa with my beautiful wife and children. I've been on this journey of rediscovery, I guess you could say, of the Hue. And I think we're all really drawn to the Hue. I think it's familiar to us. I've seen it many times in my life in different ways, and just nice to come to it. And I just thought I'm going to get straight into sharing some of the ways that I've done some things with it, and what I've been doing recently. And it's kind of weird because I can't see myself, so it's just this image of my work. There's a couple different techniques that I've used here. This was a show that I had on last year based at Corbin Arts Estate, and the large middle one and the one in the, I guess it's the left corner, which is the done in a Hawaiian style, or a Ni'au style, which is one of the smaller outer islands of Hawaii. I did that using, that's a style in which when the Hue is green, after you've just picked it, you carve it lightly into the skin, just that first little outer layer. And then you, once you finish that, you fill it with water, dump the seeds out, and then fill it with mud. And then it takes on the color of the mud in the old skin. You can see where the carved out patterns are. So that's one of the techniques that I've pushed myself to, and I do think in that style that's kind of up there with definitely one of the toughest techniques, but most amazing effect that I've seen out of all the Hue stuff that I've seen in the past. Mostly we see them painted or decorated or embellished on the outside. And then there's a lot of contemporary ways of doing it as well. There's one of the designs there is it looks like a honu, and so when I'm designing Hue or trying to make something out of it, I'm really looking at the shape of what that Hue is and how it can be utilized. And so with this show, I was lucky because I'd grown some, but I was gifted some Hue as well, as people were supporting me in this show. And so I got some that are kind of they're better actually laying down than sitting on their in the way that they were grown. They were either grown off a vine, so they've kind of elongated, or along the ground, so they've laid down. And that gives it another great, instead of thinking of it as maybe, oh, that's not a great way of what am I going to do with this? It creates another opportunity in which it could be used. And I think when if you're thinking of designing or making anything from your Hue, to always look at it and let it speak to you and say, this is what it's going to be. Because if it can't sit flat, and that can come through the growing process. If it can't sit flat, then it's going to lay on its side. So maybe it needs to be something that's done on its side. Candace, if there's no more images, can you, here we go. So here's some more. As you can see there, I've done a few different techniques of using it. The one that's cut sideways on a bowl that makes it a large kind of ipu, and a bowl that is, a straight copy of some of design that I've seen in other places in kind of the history books, just in a contemporary where I painted it. I think it was gifted to me painted, and so I just added to it. The one behind it that's standing out, it's mostly white. It looks almost kind of dirty because that was carved. I carved into it, I incision, and then I painted it red and white, and then I actually embellished it with a bit of with a bit of color in that, because it didn't look great sitting. You know, it didn't come off as this great, perfect design, but giving it some texture with marking it up with black ink and stuff made it a lot more interesting, instead of having this kind of perfect look. It now had a little more character and a lot more going on with it. The one you can see me, I'm playing a hue as an instrument, and there's one sitting in front of me. This is when Candace came to visit me to talk about this webinar, and those are two different hue that are played as a kind of a, I wouldn't want to say nguru, but as the round one in the front is in a Hawaiian style. It was quite known, well documented version of a nose flute for the way the Hawaiians play it. And so and that was used. I did pyrography, which is basically burning the design in. I mean, you can get a wood burning tool now quite cheaply from different shops, like, you know, from a hardware store, if you asked about wood burning, or a craft store, an art store, if you wanted to do it like that. I think actually our ancestors, they actually used the small sticks and just relit it, touched it, relit it, touched it, relit it, touched it. So it just shows the hours and the patience that they put into doing the designs. And now we have like metal tools that heat up with a plug. Yeah, and then as you can see, there's the feke on the end, and that is the top of a hue that I cut off. And so it was like, what could this be? You know, you look at what is the hue giving you? You know, I did think about, I could create a funnel, you know, in a practical sense, it could be a funnel, but as I was doing this art show, I made the little octopus or feke there. If there's, is there any more images there, Candace? Because if not, if you could just put me on the screen, I can show you some of my stuff here right now, because I thought the best way I could do, and I've made some stuff today. So you can see I've got all these different hue over the last couple of years. This one's a light one. And I would just say, guys, we value them so much, we put so much work into them, and you might be a little scared to actually make something with it or cut into it. Go for it, because that will motivate you to grow some more. And that is the way you're going to harvest your seeds. So getting into it, when you finally, I'm sure it's sat in front of you for a very long period of time, and you'd like, I'd like to do this with it. Or, you know, you're thinking of your classwork, you know, you could draw silhouettes with your students and say, okay, what can we do? How can we use this? Do we want to make it into a vessel, a water vessel for the mara, you know, or special occasions? Will it make an instrument? All these kind of things. Don't be afraid, you know. And so here's one I've cut. So, you know, it can be a ladle for something. Maybe you need to water something in your garden. Who knows? Here's that one there. So that's with the wood burning technique. I just wanted to show you some of these are ones that I've bought and collected from op shops, you know, seeing how other cultures are decorating them and utilizing them. This you know, this one looks like it's actually from India more than China. I could be wrong, I don't know, because I got it at the op shop. This one I'm guessing is from South America, because they're quite popular still in their culture there. You know, you've got, you know, for the Raranga people that can weave something around it to create a thing. So here's I've cut the edge off of one, and then I've carved the face into there. So, you know, it's just taking every little bit and utilizing it. You know, cut the top off this one, but it looks kind of like a manu head. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but it's taking the idea and making it, you know, like we value it so much. And I even wanted to show, because I keep all my broken ones too. You know, this is a kind of a failed one that I cut to try to make something. But when you want to try a new technique, you know, you can have a go and a tutu on this one, and not feel bad about screwing up the already broken one that you had, because it's going to be around for quite a while until it ends up turning to dust. And this is one that I actually tried to smoke, but I over smoked it, and I actually kind of burn a hole in it. So so if you're gonna try and smoke these things, keep a good eye on it. So just that kind of stuff. Here's my little feke, the one that you saw in the picture. So there's some that I still have around. That's it. That's the top of the hue that I cut off. You know, so what was it? It's a feke. I just, because I'm a little extra and I've been wanting to try this technique, and I'm curious about it, and just so I didn't feel like a fraud, I carved this one out. If you can see in it, it's got the holes. And there we go. So this is, I used literally just a drill, like my Makita drill, drilled the holes into it. Obviously sketched the design onto it, and then drilled the holes into it. And then I luckily had an old lamp base to use this. So it's really quickly, gives a quite nice light. Luckily I had a little lamp base, so my family's pretty excited about that. And the same thing, I've been wanting to create something like this. You know, I've seen, we obviously have there's a Hue Facebook page that was started by Therese, luckily, and you know, seeing some other people doing this kind of work, and it was like, yeah, I want to try that. We need to build on it. You know, that's what our ancestors did. That's what people did. They made something, and it just went on, and people built on that, all that knowledge carried forward. And yeah, so I just wanted to show some of the tools. I have my Dremel in here. If you're lucky enough to have something like a Dremel, which is, I'm sure you know, most people know what it is, but it's got a hand wand. You can cut with it. You could use like a bit like, these are like a sanding bit, but they're actually really good for cutting into, like if you want to cut the top off, once you draw on your line, you can use something like that, or a hacksaw. You can just do it with a hacksaw, which is super simple, does the job just as good as this does. It's just I'm just a little extra with it. I mean, I've just kind of, you know, here I've emptied out the seeds from that hue. You know, I've got, you know, my little cutting tools. You know, just whatever will work. You know, it doesn't have to be the flash stuff. And I actually did push myself to do it with the drill to see if it could be done before I told you guys you can do it with the drill. Because it would have been a lot easier to do with the Dremel, because it's got that wand and I could have just gone boop, 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 boop. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I use I've made some traditional inks out of lamp black. You know, I really pushed myself in that art show to make like lamp black mixed with basically animal fat, which was bacon fat, just to learn that technique. And from ochre, I made like a paint and tried that way as well. So it's just really pushing ourselves to explore. And I know that last year was a terrible growing season for most of us, so we're probably holding on to those hue very, very desperately, and we're loving on it. But I would just suggest to get into it, create with it. You know, if you are doing something with the students, you know, it's like you're planning that intention with it to really to make it into something that you know, that everyone will be proud of. And if it breaks, then that's the lesson is that comes out of it, is that you're gonna learn something from that break and keep the broken parts. I didn't explain, but in that one of the first photos is there is one hue that it destroyed, and I tried that Hawaiian style in carving it, but it failed and it fell apart. But I still kept it, and I still kept it in the show to show that it's not all perfect and it's not all this. And it was actually one of the pieces that people were most drawn to. and it's kind of shows that the life cycle too, is all the seeds were still in it. It was just kind of spilling out. It still had its own beauty. And like I said, I hold every piece that I have because something might come out of it later, or I might learn something from it. So I just wanted to, yeah, there we go. It's in the picture of the 3, and you can see the one that's kind of crumbled there. Thank you, Candace. So it's just to, yeah, just that was a lesson in itself, and it was really well, surprisingly, really well received. I wanted to show the effort, and that it wasn't all perfect. This isn't an easy space. The Hue is a special taonga that we're still learning, and I think we're all here to learn more, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity to share with you guys. And if you have any questions or some practical ones, or that, you know, I've been lucky because I have some people that I've learned from that have made connections in Hawaii that have helped me with some of this and supported me in that, and people here that have supported me. So I'm definitely happy to, you know, it's not magic. It's just putting that effort in. So if you really want any of this stuff, it's all out there. And if I can help you get to it a little quicker, I will. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to say. If anyone has any questions, yeah, I just felt like I went on a big ramble there, and yeah.
Yeah, oh, Namahi, that was amazing. I'm really inspired, and I love what you said about, you know, letting the Hue talk to you, you know, about its usage, and, you know, even all the broken parts, there's something that can be salvaged and used and to turn into something useful or beautiful. So Namahi, was there any questions that came through on the chat for Shanti?
No, just expressions of yeah, Kaurawa beauty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing work, Numa. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, the one on this side in the left corner. Could you just use like a kit, you know, a butter knife or something to carve onto a green Hue? Is that
you can use,
the type of?
Yes. I've seen other people, like I watch YouTube videos, people just use like a pocket knife, or I use like an X-Acto blade, or like yeah, like an X-Acto blade, but you have to be very careful not to go into if you cut past that first layer. You know, I feel comfortable using that tool because I use tools like that quite a lot. I do like wood block carving and things like that. So where some people say use like a wood carving tools and stuff like that. Some people can. I think it really is how resilient and how big and thick your Hue is. Depends how deep you can go in it. I'm not the greatest grower, and that's I'm like Therese. I think I'm only in my 3rd or 4th season, and you know, I lucked out and got some really good ones in the first year, and then, you know, once again, every Hue season has been different, so I don't feel like I'm learning anything, and but in the last year I got a lot of great advice, and then meeting more like-minded people through our communities online has really helped. So I'm looking forward to this year. The hardest part is for me is like keeping it watered, you know, making sure that you you know, you keep on top of it and do all that stuff. I'm not the greatest green thumb. I like to put things in the ground, but you know, easier for those kind of more resilient crops. I did see a question coming through there. I'm just gonna pull.
Yeah. How long did you leave the water and mud in the first one on the left?
Yeah, those ones, it's about a month of it. You're leaving the mud in it, and then it's like, you know, it's weird because I've been following a lady who goes under Kappa Hawaii, which is Tapa Hawaii, but she also does this practice too when it's in season. And so she leaves it in for a month, and then she dumps it out, and then it's almost to a hardened state, And then I think she just lets it dry out, and then she actually goes down, because it's not like perfect like that. It actually has some of that skin on it. And then she takes it to the beach and takes the sand in the surf and kind of sands it off with the seawater and the sand, and just rubs it down and gets all the kind of imperfections. But she's not aiming to do this like really high production. She's just going through the motion, knocking it out. You know, like I was trying to copy kind of the intricacy that I'd seen through museum collections. So really trying to get that real nice crisp line, where I think she's wasn't so much focused on that, but over the overall thing. So it's got to, when the mud's in there, you have the water in there for a while, and then you dump it out, and a lot of seeds come up. But when you put the mud in there, it basically rots all the inside out, and then the color comes out. It soaks in through the inside. So yeah, that's basically about as long as it takes, about a month.
Wow. I know you're going away, Numa, but you may get some requests from school to come and do an art project with Hue. Oh, that's amazing. I've just seen it's gone 8 o'clock, and I know that we've all got busy lives and, you know, families, and probably haven't had dinner. So unfortunately, we do have to wrap this up. I'll just quickly mention a couple of things. So Garden to Table schools, we do facilitate a bit of seed swapping. So if you do have excess Hue seeds, you can go to the website, and the information is there about how to share some seeds to other schools. And if you would like seeds, you can also go via there as well. Of course, there's the Hue Kōrero Facebook group, so amazing stuff on that Facebook page. I can see people have already started germinating and planting seeds, so yeah, quite an exciting time. So stay connected, keep your stories coming in. We love seeing stories and photos, and, you know, if you've got any questions, please get in touch. We will be sending out some things post-webinar with some links and the resource that Prashanti mentioned. We don't really have that much time for questions at the end, but I know there's been questions coming in, and we can follow up any that we did miss. So ngā mihi nui for our speakers tonight, Therese, Brendan, Erin and Numa. It's been a pleasure and a privilege listening to you all tonight. We really look forward to continuing to learn and grow Hue. And I look forward to sharing back to you as well where the Garden to Table community takes this learning. So yeah, thank you. It's been amazing tonight, and yeah, really awesome to connect with you. So thank you. There's just some photos from schools that have sent to me over the year. If anyone would like to lead us in a closing karakia, please feel free to do that. I'm just going to ask the Garden to Table, is it Louise who's on here, and Prashanti, if you could take your mic off and just help me do this. I haven't had much experience in this. Or anyone else who wants to take their mic off, and sorry, their mute off, I should say. And let's do this karakia together. Kia ora. Ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, haumea hue tai kia. Oh, kia ora everyone. Thanks for coming.
Te pai rawa te mahi o tēnei pota wānanga nei noro. Mihi kei ngā kai kōrero, ngā kai whakahaere, tēnei wānanga aha koe hui topa. Pai rawa atu. Nō rei, kei runga anu atu koutou. Ko Mari.
Nā
Ko
koe.
Māori, eh?
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Mari.
Tēnā koe.
Kia Māori, eh?
Cheers.
O Māori.